So how do people actually make money in real estate? Believe it or not, it's more than just flipping houses.
There's like poop, there's like cat litter.
And then fur and fleas.
It is disgusting.
Yeah, it doesn't actually work like that in real life. In this video, I'm going to share with you the top 10 strategies for making money in real estate. And yes, flipping houses is on this list, but there are at least 9 other ways to do it. Find out what they are coming up. Hey guys, if we're just meeting, my name is Vitaly Volpov. I'm a practicing attorney, an active real estate investor, and a part owner of a real estate brokerage in upstate New York. On this channel, I discuss relevant legal concepts as well as best strategies and tips for real estate investing. If you're new to the channel, consider subscribing and hitting the notification bell so that YouTube notifies you of all my future content. If you enjoyed the content in this video, hit the like button and comment down below. Strategy number 1, buy and hold. This is one of the most popular ways to get into real estate investing, and one of my all-time favorites. It's very simple. You buy a rental property, rent it out to a tenant, and hold it for a long period of time, collecting cash flow, paying down the mortgage, and letting the property appreciate in value. This can be done with a variety of different types of properties: single-family, multifamily, and commercial properties. There are also numerous tactics and sub-strategies that are involved in the buy and hold strategy, which I'm not going to go into much detail here other than to say that they include house hacking and the BRRRR method. Buy and hold is a slow and dependable process. If done correctly, it can be a pretty low-risk investment. It can also be pretty passive, although not entirely so because you need to continue to manage the property and your tenants. Strategy number 2 is flipping houses. With this strategy, you have to buy a property, increase its value by fixing it up, and sell it as soon as possible to maximize your profit. This is usually done with single-family properties, but it is also possible to do it with raw land as well as multifamily and commercial buildings, although the last two are pretty rare. This strategy can yield a significant one-time profit, but it is a lot more active than the buy and hold strategy. Also, there's no residual income with this strategy. However, some real estate investors run an entire house flipping business, where they flip multiple properties per year and delegate most of the process, making it a semi-passive business. If you're interested in this strategy, check out my video on flipping houses for a more in-depth look on whether it makes sense to start flipping houses if you're just a beginner. Strategy number 3 is slow flipping. Now, some people might disagree with my definition, but what I consider slow flipping is buying a property, improving it in some way, holding it for at least a year as a rental, and then selling it for a profit. This is a hybrid between the buy and hold and the flipping strategies, and capitalizes on a little bit of both. I actually like this strategy quite a bit because you get to take advantage of some of the principles of buy and hold while also getting the main benefit of the flipping strategy, which is the big profit when you sell at the end. By using the property as a rental first, you get to improve the tax treatment of the profit you make when you sell. When you sell a rental property within a year, your profit will be usually taxed as a short-term capital gain, or worse, if you're considered a dealer, it will be treated as ordinary income and may be subject to self-employment tax in addition to regular income taxes. But with the slow flip, you avoid this issue altogether if you hold the property as a rental for over a year. The other reason I like this strategy is that you give yourself another exit, meaning that unlike house flipping, you don't have to sell quickly. You can hold on to the property indefinitely, assuming you're at least breaking even on the cash flow. So if something happens in your local market making it difficult to sell the property for a profit, you're not forced to take a loss and can simply wait it out for a few years before selling. Slow flipping can be done with single-family properties, but I think it usually works best with multifamily and possibly commercial properties. I plan to make a separate video on how I slow flipped a 4-unit building for a $140,000 net profit after holding it for 3 years. I'll link it up in the YouTube card so that you guys can check it out if you're interested in that. Strategy number 4 is wholesaling. This is where you sell the right to purchase a property to another investor and collect a fee in the process. There are actually a few different definitions of wholesaling that people use. But my definition is that wholesaling is getting a property under contract for a certain price and then assigning your right to that contract to another buyer who actually buys the property and pays you a fee at closing for assigning them the contract. This is different than flipping because you never actually take title to the property. You simply sell to another investor your right to buy the property at the price that you and the seller agreed on. The idea is that the price for which you got the seller to agree to sell you the property is below market, and the ultimate buyer is happy to pay you a fee for the right to buy that property at that price. Depending on the deal, fees can range from a few $1,000s to tens of thousands of dollars. This strategy works best with single-family homes, but it can also work with other types of properties. Although wholesaling seems simple and does not require much capital to get started, it is actually a lot harder than it looks. You need to know a lot about real estate in order to wholesale successfully. This is definitely one of the more active strategies, because in order to make money, you have to constantly look for deals and negotiate with sellers and buyers. There are also issues with the legalities involved with this strategy, which vary from state to state. I'm going to do a more in-depth video on the strategy in the near future, especially as it pertains to my home state of New York. So check that out when it comes out. Strategy number 5 is collecting real estate commissions as a real estate agent or broker. The big caveat with this one is that you actually have to get your real estate license in order to do it. But to be honest, getting your real estate license is not all that difficult. I covered this topic in depth in the last video I did with one of the agents from my brokerage. I'll link it up in the description, so if you guys are interested in the pros and cons of getting your real estate license, you can check it out there. Being a real estate agent can be a lucrative business and a good way to get your foot in the door in the real estate game. There are agents who actually make significant amounts of money representing buyers and sellers as their primary career. But you don't have to do it that way. You can just do it part-time as a side hustle. Making money as a real estate agent is definitely an active business and requires time and energy to be successful. Hey, if you guys are getting value from this video, smash the like button for the YouTube algorithm, and let me know in the comments what you think of these different strategies. All right, strategy number 6, short-term rental arbitrage. Some people also call it Airbnb arbitrage. That's a fancy title, I know, but the strategy is pretty simple. It involves leasing an apartment from the owner and then subleasing it to short-term renters through sites like Airbnb and HomeAway. This strategy has gained a lot of popularity in recent years, and the advantage of it is that you don't need much money to get started and you don't actually have to own any real estate. Instead of buying real estate, you simply sign a lease with the owner and you then re-rent the same property to a short-term tenant for a much higher rent, and you get to keep the difference. There are investors out there who do this with dozens and even hundreds of apartments, and they are able to make substantial returns as a result. Some of the major drawbacks to this strategy, however, are that you don't get to build any equity, and you also need a solid team of people to make sure that every part of the process runs smoothly. With rental arbitrage, you're essentially in the hospitality business. You usually have to furnish the properties and provide a cleaning and maid service on a daily basis, and this is definitely an active type of business. Strategy number 7 is real estate syndication. This is another fancy title, and it is a little bit more complicated. This strategy involves pooling funds from a number of different investors and using those funds to buy a large piece of property, typically a large apartment complex of 100 units or more. The syndication deal is put together by a sponsor who finds and manages the deal. The investors, who usually provide a substantial portion of the funding, typically don't have any say in how the property is managed. They simply collect interest on their money and get to partake in any profits upon the eventual sale of the apartment complex. The legal structure is usually set up as a limited liability company in which the individual investors own membership interests while the sponsor acts as the LLC's manager. Alternatively, it can be set up as a limited partnership where the sponsor is a general partner while the investors are limited partners. In either case, the sponsor is a person or a group of people with substantial experience in real estate, especially apartment building investing. The investors, on the other hand, are people with substantial financial means. They are required to be accredited or sophisticated investors, as those terms are defined by the federal tax law and regulations. The sponsor typically collects management fees of a few percentage points of the deal's profits. Investors, on the other hand, get a preferred investment return anywhere from 5% to 10%. Once the preferred return is attained, any remaining profits are typically split 70-30, with 70% going to the investors and 30% going to the sponsor. If you can acquire enough knowledge and real estate connections, you may be able to become a sponsor and profit from the strategy that way. Alternatively, if you don't have the time and the desire to acquire the particular knowledge needed to become a sponsor, but you qualify as an accredited or a sophisticated investor, you may be able to get involved in the syndication deal by investing your money with a sponsor. If you're a sponsor, this is a pretty active form of investing, at least initially. If you're an investor, it is pretty much 100% passive. Today, it is pretty easy to become an investor in a syndication deal through platforms like Realty Shares, Peer Street, and others, even if you don't have a ton of money or knowledge of real estate. But you should always do your own research and due diligence before investing your money with any platform or syndicator. Strategy number 8 is private lending. This is another very passive way of investing where you lend money directly to another investor who then uses your money for their own real estate deals. Unlike syndication, however, you typically do not obtain any ownership interest in the property itself or the entity that owns it. Rather, you simply act as a bank for that investor and you earn interest on your money. The interest rate you earn is set up by an agreement between you and the borrower, but it is not unusual for interest rates in this type of arrangement to be 8% or higher. If you have funds to invest, this could be a good way to earn a high and stable interest return. The downside is that you really need to know and trust the borrower and the borrower's ability to wisely and responsibly use the money you're lending them. The risk is that if they default, you may lose some or all of that money you lent them. To hedge against that, you want to ensure that you obtain adequate security for your loan. This usually means getting a lien on the property, a personal guarantee from the borrower, and other types of security. Strategy number 9 is called note investing. This strategy involves purchasing real estate promissory notes at a discount to the remaining value of the loan principal. To put simply, with this strategy, you buy the contract that represents the real estate loan, called the promissory note, from the original lender. You step into the shoes of the original lender, and from that point on, the borrower pays the monthly mortgage payments to you. When you buy the loan from the original lender, you usually pay that lender less than the remaining principal balance of the loan. So you can actually make money in 2 ways with this strategy. 1, by collecting interest during the life of the loan, and 2, by receiving the full remaining balance when the loan is paid off. Because you also get the security interest, the mortgage in the property, if the borrower defaults, you can foreclose on the property and either take over the operation of the property, if it's a rental, or sell it and recoup the remaining principal. This is a fairly passive strategy that does not require very much involvement on the part of the investor as long as the borrower continues to pay. However, it can become a lot more involved and risky in the event of a default. Finally, the last strategy that I'll mention is real estate development. This is where you buy a piece of raw land and improve it, either by building on it or developing an infrastructure such as roads, sewers, and water connections, and then selling the property. Now, you could say that this strategy can fall under the flipping strategy, but in my mind, it's quite a bit different. When you're flipping, you're usually taking an existing structure and making relatively minor improvements to it to increase its value. When you develop raw land, you have to build a structure from the ground up. There's a lot more involvement in developing real estate than flipping houses from the construction aspect, which is why it is typically done by builders who own their own construction companies. The profit margins per house for building are much more substantial than they are for flipping. However, real estate development requires a lot of business infrastructure and know-how. If you've never invested or done anything with real estate before, I don't think that real estate development is something that you may want to jump into right away. But you could potentially partner with a real estate builder to develop a property if a deal makes sense. Obviously, if you're going to partner with a builder, you would need to bring something different to the table that the builder doesn't already have. Otherwise, they wouldn't really need you to do the deal. So that's going to do it for this video, guys. Let me know in the comments below if I missed any major strategies, and also let me know if you agree with my thoughts about the ones that I talked about. Have a great day, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care.